Hi, mystery writers. Oh, wow. Okay, today we're going to talk about what readers want from a scene. First, I have a couple of announcements. One is there's going to be no live session next week. It's Thanksgiving week in the United States, so I want to wish all the members who live in the United States, wish you a happy Thanksgiving, and then I'll see you again the week after Thanksgiving. And also, I'm very excited to tell you that there's a special Black Friday deal just for writers coming next week, and I'll share more about that in the group on Tuesday, the 23rd. All right, so keep your eyes open for that special Black Friday deal for writers. All right, so what do readers want from scenes? Readers want one thing. They want change. Scenes are the building blocks of your story, and each scene moves the story forward and sheds new light on the main character. And each scene is a mini story with the same overall sequence as the main story, beginning, middle, end. And within that mini story, change happens. And Jane Friedman, who writes um, about publishing and writing, said stories are about change, and I do suggest that you follow Jane Friedman. She has a lot of up-to-date information about the publishing world. Um, Stories are built on conflict, and they're built on conflict and resolution. So without conflict, there's no story. Um, And before, I have covered the two types of scenes, the proactive and the reactive scene, and there's change in both of those. Um, the proactive scene leaves the protagonist with a setback, and the reactive scene makes a decision that leads to change. So, you have 4 reader targets within each scene. Now, I don't suggest that you think about these things while you're writing, but there's something to really definitely consider when you are editing. Even if your editing is reading what you wrote the day before, okay? So each scene has a story arc. We have that beginning, middle, and end, and the purpose is to move the story forward, right? The scenes are the building blocks of your story. So for readers, what that means is you're keeping them engaged as the story unfolds. And you want to have these 4 reader emotional targets to involve your reader in the scene. The first is the story plot. You want to know the purpose of the scene within the story. For example, the purpose of the scene is to reveal the protagonist's lifelong practice of martial arts to provide motivation for knowing when and how to fight. Okay, that's just one example of how a scene showing your character practicing martial arts fits into the overall story arc. All right, so we have the plot, then we have the character, and the feeling about the character is what keeps the reader engaged, and you especially want to concentrate in each scene on the feeling that your reader has at the end of the scene. That you want them to feel that change from the beginning of the scene to the end of the scene. So, for example, when the reader finishes the scene, they'll feel sympathy for the protagonist, but be skeptical skeptical about her ability to solve the puzzle. So you want to keep your reader emotionally engaged with each scene. All right, and the third of the four, so we have the story plot, the character, and we have the theme of your story, what your reader thinks at the end of the scene. So, for example, at the end of the scene, the reader will think the protagonist has good observational skills, but is using them incorrectly. So that's going to keep them from solving that mystery puzzle. All right. And the fourth emotional engagement for the reader is the conflict suspense. So at the end of the scene, the reader will wonder, what will she do next? So, for example, will the protagonist overcome the political forces against them, or anything? It's like you're leaving the reader with a question, which creates suspense, which makes them want to keep reading to find out how their question is going to be answered. So, once again, when you're in the flow of writing, it's not difficult to miss one of these reader target elements. So, don't overthink your writing while you're writing. You can check each scene for the targets when you're editing. When you're writing, keep in the flow. All right. On the other hand, knowing these four reader targets, these emotional targets, will help you craft scenes that keep readers reading, and that's exactly what we want. We want to keep those readers reading. We don't want them to stall at any point in our story. So, if readers want change, what are some ways that we can create change in a scene? Change evolves in the scene through the characters. So each scene requires a character to evolve within the story. They may be pulled out of the comfort zone, or something in the scene complicates the situation, or your character is forced to make a decision, or the character takes action on the decision, or you may describe what the action or decision means. So, especially when, as the stakes increase in your story, you want your reader to understand what the consequences of an action or the decision that your character makes. You want your reader to understand what those consequences are, because we always want our readers to be rooting for our main character. So the scene represents an event in this story, and for mystery writers, when a detective evaluates the knowledge that he or she has so far from the evidence and clues, he's making a change. And the change is the decision to act on the knowledge that they have so far. So I know that I'm not sure I've ever mentioned this in the group before, but those scenes where your character reviews all the evidence that they have so far, looks at what they've learned from witness suspect interviews. Those scenes really solidify the problems your detective faces. They solidify those problems for the reader. I'll give you an example. I had a really fabulous reading group, which was very small. There were just four of us. But there was one person in the group that I thought of as the reader. That was like, this is the base level of readers, what they understand about the story. And if she questioned something that had happened 2 pages earlier in the story, I went, okay, I need to emphasize this. I need to bring it more to the reader's attention. So you may want to think about that, is that don't skip those review sequences, all right? Just make your reader aware of all the different information that your detective has and how they're going to make decisions based on the information they have so far. So essentially, for a scene, um, you you want to have event thinking. What is the event that is happening in this scene, and how does the character change from the beginning to the end? Um, and the easiest way to illustrate change in the scene is to build around that one central event of the scene. So, for example, in one scene, your detective evaluates information and makes a decision. And in the follow up scene, your detective takes action on that decision. This action could be right or wrong, but your reader is following the progress from scene to scene. Um, all right, that's essentially what I wanted to share about that. Is you want those 4 emotional points for your reader: the story plot, the character, the theme, and the conflict suspense. You really want to make sure those elements are in your scene, and think about the ways that you're representing change in your scene. I hope that helps. And once again, thank you to all the members who show up for these events. And have a happy Thanksgiving. And I'll see you. I guess that's going to be in December. Wow. Sure is going along. All right. Thank you.